So when there's no emergency incidents happening within your area as a firefighter, what are we actually doing at the fire hall all day? For my department, we work a 24-hour shift. That's a long time. Now, I'm sure all of you know a firefighter, have a buddy, have a cousin, have a nephew who's a firefighter, and everyone's got a different opinion as to what that day looks like. You're going to have some firefighters that say, you know what, we're just slammed. We work calls, all shift long, no breaks. And then you have other firefighters who are a little bit more, unabashed about it and say, you know what, yeah, me and the guys, we were playing Xbox and we had a barbecue and stuff like that. So every department's going to be a little bit different, and I'm not speaking on behalf of every department, but what I want to do in this video is I want to explain as clearly as I can, as honestly as I can, what a shift looks like for me in my department, understanding that there's going to be variations across the board. And I want to give you a accurate and an honest representation of just what that looks like. I'm not here to prove anything. What I have noticed in the public when I talk to people, there's often kind of two prevailing perspectives about firefighters at the fire hall when we're not doing emergency calls. Kind of the first perspective is that, there's that hero culture, and people just, they say thank you for your service, and they just they think and they assume that we're just saving babies' lives 24 hours a day, and we're rescuing people and we're putting our life on the line every hour of every day. The second group of people is the group that just assumes that we're doing, the barbecues and sleepovers, and, maybe we'll work out and then we sleep, and then we go to a call and then we work out again and then we sleep, and then, maybe we have something to eat. So those are kind of like the two, different camps of views of firefighters. And honestly, I don't try to change people's opinions of either of those. When I meet someone on the street and they say, thank you for your service, what you guys must see is terrible. I imagine you're dealing with dead bodies every day. I just say to them, thank you for your appreciation. I appreciate that. Sometimes the days are really hard. Sometimes we go to really bad calls. And I appreciate you saying thank you. And then when someone else comes up to me, or, a friend or something like that, and, I'm coming off a night shift and they say, hey, how was the sleepover? Did you get lots of sleep last night and stuff like that? I just smile and I shrug and I say, yeah, you know what? We had a pretty good night. And I just move on. I don't try to change people's opinions. Everyone's free to make up their own opinion. So what a shift looks like for me in my department, it goes like this. Our department, our managers, our fire chief has set up our day with a daily schedule. And what we'll do is we will try to follow that daily schedule as best we can, provided we don't have emergency incidents. Now, if we get a 911 call, if we have an emergency incident, everything gets dropped and we go attend that call for however long it takes. And then we come back to the hall and we recoup and we try to resume that daily schedule. I've got my cup of coffee this morning like any good firefighter at the fire hall. So for me, my shift starts at 0800 hours, 8 o'clock a.m. Start of the shift, we get our gear on the truck. So you're putting your personal protective equipment on the truck. You're getting everything set up. If you're driving the truck, you're doing a commercial vehicle pre-trip inspection. So you're checking your air brakes, you're checking your fire pump, you're checking your mechanical components of that apparatus, make sure it's safe for operation. If you're the firefighters, you're checking the equipment. So there's a handful of very commonly used pieces of equipment that we're using all the time. Our medical kits, our fire hoses, our gas saws, that sort of stuff. And guys will just go through and they'll do a check to make sure that they are comfortable with the readiness of the equipment. Again, different departments are going to have different standards on who does that, when it's done, how extensively it's done. We do about a 30-minute check in the morning where we check as many things as we can in 30 minutes. We check our SCBA packs, we fire up our air bottles, we breathe through our masks, we make sure everything's working. If you're the fire officer, in that first 30 minutes, you're logging into the computer, you're getting your crew set up for the day, you're checking the shift emails, etc. At 8:30 a.m., we roll into a morning drill. So this is supposed to just be, a short 15 to 30 minute drill where we're just putting hands on equipment, a basic firefighter drill. Maybe we're dressing fire hydrants. Maybe we're throwing ground ladders. Maybe we're pulling a hose, something like that. Now, from there, let's say 9 o'clock approximately, I'm going to run through this whole schedule as if we got 0 calls, right? Which doesn't happen, but I'm going to just kind of run through it as if we got no calls. So at 9 a.m., we then roll into one of two things. We roll either into building inspections or we roll into more in-depth crew training. So of my 2 24-hour shifts in a block, the first day we'll often do building inspections. So from there, we get a list of inspections from our fire prevention division, and these are public occupancy. So we're not inspecting private residences, but anywhere where there's access to the public, whether it be a store or a church or a shopping mall or an apartment building with common areas, we are doing fire inspections of those. What we're doing is we're going through and we're trying to identify any non-compliances on behalf of the building owner or, risks to the public. So we're making sure that, the fire protection equipment has been serviced, like the fire extinguishers have been serviced, the sprinkler system has been serviced. We're making sure that there's no, hindrances to egress. Someone hasn't piled, a couch in the hallway of an apartment building that could block people's escape, that sort of stuff. We're also taking a look at the building from the exterior and seeing, hey, is there anything that's preventing us as firefighters from doing our job? This could be something as simple as the building address is not clearly visible. Maybe a tree or a bush has grown in front of the address numbers. Well, if we're trying to find an address and it's covered by bushes, obviously that's going to delay our response if we need to go to that building. So that sort of stuff. We'll continue that through until our coffee break. We take a normal coffee break. Fire hall coffee breaks are often a little longer than, let's say, a production crew coffee break where it's kept, to a 15 minutes. It's just part of fire hall culture. Sometimes we miss our coffee breaks entirely, right? Like if you get an emergency incident at 8 o'clock, and that could run through for 4, 5, 6 hours, you don't get any breaks, right? So when we're at the fire hall, when there's no calls, we'll take a good coffee break. After coffee break, we'll roll back into whatever we were doing before coffee, either building inspections or further crew training. So let's say we're going to roll ahead with our building inspection. We just keep doing building inspections until we hit lunch. Now, in my department, we don't do grocery shopping on lunch. Our chief doesn't want us to do that. And so we bring groceries to the hall and then we cook a meal together. We have lunch, again, a typical lunch break, roughly an hour long. After lunch, we go into whatever we were doing before lunch. So if it was a building inspection day, we'd continue to do building inspections. If it's a training day, we roll into further crew training. That goes until about roughly our afternoon coffee break. Often our afternoon coffee break gets pushed a little bit because, again, I'm explaining this as if there's no calls happening, but that rarely happens. So often we'll take that afternoon coffee at 4 p.m., 4:30, even 5 p.m. if it gets that late. And we'll roll from an afternoon coffee into our workout hour. So in my department, we're given 1 hour a day where we can use the gym and we can work out. So we'll work out for that hour. After workout time, we'll roll into dinner. Now we're probably, let's say 5:30, 6 o'clock. We cook dinner. We eat dinner. Let's say dinner wraps up at 6:30, 7 p.m. Now, after 7 p.m., we do shift duties. Now, in my department, we're a smaller department, and so the full-time firefighters, we have quite a number of shift duties that we have to do because we're also a composite department. So we have full-time firefighters and we have volunteer firefighters or paid-on-call firefighters. Those paid-on-call firefighters are there to support us at emergency incidences. But they also have, equipment and tools and all that sort of stuff that needs to be restocked and repaired, training offered in the evenings for them. So we'll run into shift duties. We're repairing equipment, we're ordering supplies, we're building programs, we're delivering training, etc. And we'll run that through until ideally roughly 9 p.m., 10 p.m. In my department, we have quiet hours after 10 p.m. And so honestly, it doesn't happen often on my shift where we're in bed at 10 p.m., but if we can, we try to be in bed for around 10 p.m. At 10 p.m., we still have another 10 hours left in our shift. So we don't want to, we don't want to be training till 2 or 3 in the morning and be completely exhausted and then get a big structure fire or something like that. So if we can, we try to go and we lay down at 10 p.m. From 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. through till roughly 7 a.m., 6:30, 7 a.m. the next morning, is just operational duties, meaning responding to emergency incidences. So if you get a 911 call, you're out of bed, you're down in the truck, you deal with the emergency, you come back, you put your rig back together, and then if you can, you go back to bed. After 7 a.m., if we're not already up, we get up and we do a final, clean of the truck. We wash the truck to make sure it's clean for the next shift coming on. We take care of any outstanding shift responsibilities. We send an email if it needs to happen of different, let's say, nuisance calls we attended during the night, etc. And then around 7:30 in the morning, 7:45, we're upstairs again. We're having a coffee with the oncoming crew. And we're doing a changeover. We're handing off to them. We're telling them, anything that's wrong with the truck, any recurring calls we went to, and we're making sure that transfer happens so that the next oncoming crew can, fulfill their duties. Now, I explain that all as if we had no emergency calls, right? Now, if we get an emergency call, and in my department, so in my city, we average, on a 24-hour shift, we average, let's say for each apparatus, let's say between 8 and 12 call-outs during that 24-hour period. And, those calls can be as short as, 15 minutes where, there's a smoke detector going off in someone's house, and we can even just make a phone call and we can, hey, is everything okay? And they go, yeah, it was, shower, steam, there's no fire. We don't even need to respond to that call. Or it could be some, major fire where we're there for 6, 8, 10 hours, right? So, but on average, let's say 8 to 12 calls per 24-hour period. So you're sprinkling those in. So even though in my described day, I think I probably had like 6 or 7 hours of building inspections, on a real day, we're probably getting 2 or 3 hours of building inspections done. Sometimes we miss our workout hour. Sometimes we don't eat dinner until 10 p.m. Sometimes there's, very few calls during the day, and we get, our coffee breaks on time, and we get our workout hour, and we get our dinner in. And when we can, we take those. Firefighting is a career where I view it as you have to take it as a whole package, right? Some days you go and you work and you're slammed for 24 hours straight. And those are long shifts. And some days you'll have, 4 or 5 calls in that 24-hour period, and you have time to take all your breaks and you get some sleep at night. And it's wonderful. There's times where we are putting our lives in danger. There's times where we are, dealing with dead and mangled bodies on the highway. And then there's times where, the Super Bowl's on and all of our duties are done, and the guys will sit around and they'll watch a football game together, right? So that's just the balance of what actually happens in a fire hall. Now, when I was running through my average day, I was mentioning building inspections. The other shift will focus on crew training. And people will think like, what? You spend 8 hours a day training? Like, what do you train on? Like, don't you just put fires out? So first of all, no, we never get our full 8 hours of training in, right? There's stuff that comes up, right? The fire truck needs to go into the mechanic shop. We need to go get fuel. We respond to emergency incidences, roughly 8 to 12 per 24-hour period, right? So, but we do, when it's time to train, we do train. Now, how do we fill up this training? If you look at the scope of practice of firefighting, it is extraordinarily broad, right? If you look at law enforcement, and respect to our law enforcement, I don't want to do your job, couldn't do your job, bless you guys. But if you look at law enforcement, they just deal with primarily, criminal behavior or complaints in that sense, right? If you look at paramedics, I also don't want to do your job. Bless you guys. They deal with, medical calls, both emergencies and non-emergencies too, right? Everything else that goes through 911 goes to the fire department. And often we get called to criminal calls and medical calls as well, right? But whether that be, a technical rescue, a structure fire, an auto accident, just building alarms going off, a hazmat incident, technical rope rescue, elevator entrapment, like the list goes on and on. I've helped pull a horse out of a ditch because we had a farm and their horse got stuck in the ditch. So we're like literally winching the horse out of the ditch. Like anything and everything goes to the firefighters. Because that scope of practice is so broad, we only may get a few hours a month to train on a certain thing, and then we have to move on to the next topic. All the while, we're trying to keep our real bread and butter firefighting skills top notch because that's what we're professionals in, and we need to keep those at top level. So you're training, you're drilling, you're keeping your firefighting skills at a high level, but you also need to remember, hey, how do you deal with different types of elevators? And there's new, technology coming out all the time on different elevators, for example, or hazmat calls or whatever. So the scope is so broad, there is never a shortage of things for us to fill our training on. So that's a summary of what, a shift looks like when there's no calls. I'm not going to say we're slammed for 24 hours straight. Sometimes we are. Sometimes it's very quiet. We take our breaks when we can, and it's just a package job. And I hope that gives you a better understanding about what a shift of a firefighter looks like. Now, I got a question for you. If you learn something about what an actual shift of a firefighter looks like, not what, some bro tells you on the internet. I guess I'm telling you this on the internet, but hopefully never mind. I'll leave it there. If you've learned something, I'd encourage you to subscribe and to hit the notification bell there. The reason for this is we are a very small YouTube channel, as you know. The algorithm may not find you again. If you've learned this and you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe, and then there's a higher likelihood that you're actually going to see content from us again and hopefully learn something. You guys take care.